tribes and the Neanderthals. Second breath, breathe in. Breathe in to honor our students and witness the power of their knowledge and what they hold in their hearts, their shoulders, and their minds to change the world. Third breath, breathe in. For all of the leaders here, we acknowledge all of you, decision makers and leaders at URI, with power to honor students and to make a difference, serving the purpose why we're here, to make this place a better place for students and for the land on which this university is located. So thank you, everyone. With no further ado, I will hand this over to Dylan Murdoch. He's a freshman sustainable agriculture and food systems major and a star communications student. So he's emceeing this event today, and I'll just hand it over to you, Dylan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dylan Murdoch, and I'm here today to talk to you about sustainability. Through the hard work of communications professor Ann Salzarulo, we've been able to make this event in reality in partnership with Harrington School for the third year in a row. Our goal for this worldwide teaching event is to raise awareness about the importance of collective action towards a shared vision. I want URI to be an ever more regenerative and sustainable campus, a model for the future. Today, 3 student-run teams will be presenting their sustainable projects they have been working on to showcase in many different ways how URI can become more sustainable. After each one of the topics is introduced, we'll be holding a panel with the leading experts here at URI on how these projects or issues are being addressed on campus. The 3 different projects being presented today are composting and food systems, biodiversity and apiculture, and carbon emission and transportation. At this time, I would like to introduce Karin de Bruyn's students. They're French students. They're presenting in French today, and also their projects are in English, but their projects, thank you, their projects.
They'll have to present in French, but today it's in English.
And they are all not sustainable majors. This is just a challenge and a theme that they had to do, and it's really awesome to see all these different kinds of students and majors collaborate on real important topics here. I'd also like to take this time to introduce all the panelists we do have here today. We have Vanessa Venturini, the URI Extension Educator and State Program Leader, and the Rhode Island Master Gardener Program Leader. We have Mary Parlange, Dr. Steve Alm, the insect expert on bees. Everything about a bee he knows. Professor Norbert Mundorf, expert on sustainable transportation here at URI. We have Frankie Miner, Assistant Vice President of Housing and Residential Life. Karin de Bruyn, Professor of French and Director of the Honors Program. And we have Pierre St. Germain, Director of Dining Services here at URI. Now, I also wanted to share my dream, my vision of what I want to do here. Now, I came to URI for many reasons: to have a new start, meet new people, and always have an umbrella on hand for a random Rhode Island downpour, just like the one yesterday. The true reason was not for these things, but for something much more important: the earth. Many times we look to media and see how time and again this world is plagued by all facets of human life. Between the newly approved Willow Project and rising temperatures, these are events that should fire you up and want you to take action, not bring you down and want you to scroll on TikTok for hours. We as humans have shaped this planet into our own concrete jungle. And no, I'm not talking about the Jay-Z song. Not so long ago, it used to be the opposite. For the world was the jungle, and we were the ones trying to abide by its rules. All of us here today are scientists, including me, but I also think of myself as an artist. Achieving a truly sustainable planet will be as much as an art as a science. The artistry that's required will be in convincing people to see the problem in a different way, like I do. We often perceive nature as different from how we live, but I think both are equals. You look upon a field and see grass where I see a habitat. You look into a forest and see woods where I see the lungs of the earth. You see the ocean, and I see the heart of the planet. I want to live in harmony with nature, not conquer it. I'm looking to create solutions that define what the word sustainability means. It is my generation's responsibility to do this, to revive what once was. I'll be someone who will lead this charge, for that is my vision and dream I have here at URI. To fix broken systems and renew old ones, so that URI can become its own sustainable ecosystem. This is where the vision starts, and this is where it will blossom. I thank you all and welcome you to the event. We will now be starting with the first group.
We need to turn the.
We have slides?
Yeah, we have slides.
No.
Introduce it first. Like our title or.
You got it. Yep. So, also get close to the microphone.
So we are les vers de terre, and this is our slogan: tous au compost.
Maybe translate it?
Uh,
What?
how do I go
Wait.
to the next
Well,
slide?
no, but. Well, okay, in English, les vers de terre is earthworms. And then tous au compost is all of us to compost, or like everyone compost.
How do we go to the next slide? So, for our project, we will continue the composting plans already installed at URI. As of right now, URI already composts, but this can be significantly improved. The dining halls use a composting service called the Composting Plant. There's also a group of students we spoke with, Dylan, who are developing a composting project at URI. We want to develop this idea by helping them and contributing in relation to adding composting bins to our campus. In addition, we want to spread awareness and educate students about the composting resources available on campus. We hope that students will be able to take what they learn about composting and apply it to their lives off campus.
By implementing our project revolving around composting at URI, we can not only save money, but also contribute to the protection of the environment. Less waste will be accumulated in landfills. At the landfill, organic waste disintegrates in anaerobic condition, which is without oxygen, and then releases methane, a gas 20 times more dangerous than carbon dioxide. It is a harmful gas for the environment and contributes strongly to the global warming. Composting helps to reduce the number of waste that ends up in garbage dumps. 40% of household waste can be composted. So what is composting? Composting is the natural process of decomposing organic matter through controlled conditions. The food scraps are exposed to oxygen, and this aerobic process prevents methane from being produced, which does not happen in landfills. This can be done through composting bins filled with soils where food waste can be disposed of. The benefits of composting. So composting is a natural process that helps to stabilize the earth through the use of natural fertilizers rather than chemical. It improves soil and natural drainage and reduces waste. Composting also helps save money and natural resources.
Okay, so as we already mentioned, there are efforts to compost on campus, but we want to add to that and make it more of a part of a student's day-to-day life by adding composting bins around campus. So with some research, we found that for a large bin, it could be about $230, and then for small bins, $26. And then doing some multiplication. For 450 of these small bins, which we could put around campus, including in the 225 suites that have kitchens, that would be $11,700. And then with 10 large composting bins, that'd be $2,300, coming to a grand total of $14,000 to add bins across campus. These would just be plastic bins. They'd have a filter on them because compost can start to smell.
So why spend the $14,000? With our idea of composting at URI, we will not only save money, but also contribute to the protection of the environment. By composting, we will have less waste accumulated in our dumpsters. Because our dumpsters will not be overflowed, less money will be spent by the university when it comes to garbage collection. The money saved can be allocated to the composting plan.
All right, so what to do with all the compost? So currently, from what we understand, with the composting plant, which is the service the dining halls are using, the bins of compost of food scraps are being driven off campus. And to reduce on the carbon emissions of these trucks, why not have the composting plant or the composting pile be on campus? And this is something that Dylan is working on, currently down at Peckham Farm. And then we also recently found out that there are some lands that URI was loaning to turf farmers that they may be taking back, and that could be also a prime location to set up some composting. All right, and so the next part of our project is educating. I don't think I need to emphasize the importance of education. We are at a university. So our idea would be to educate in 3 parts: inform, participate, and continue. So the first part, inform, would be to teach the students about the projects that are already going on campus, like what the dining hall is already doing, and projects like what Dylan is working on. So to do this, we could spread awareness through just sending out emails and pamphlets, hosting events like this, and having guest speakers. Another thing that could help with educating and getting students involved is obviously having them participate. So making it easy for students to get their hands dirty and participate is a great way to build the foundations of composting and the knowledge needed. And so this could be by participating in events, so helping out with projects like what Dylan is working on. And then the goal would be to continue after university, so with the knowledge gained and the experience gained on campus, continue to compost throughout life, and maybe start some composting at their future job sites.
To summarize, our goal is to expand on current projects surrounding composting and to educate students about the resources available on campus so that they are able to apply these resources and habits to their own lives. In the future, we hope to see composting be as common as recycling and trash bills on campus. So thank you for listening. Any questions?
Can I just emphasize one thing? So these students, we're doing this for a French language project, and so they'll have to do this all in French in just 2 weeks. So this was sort of a dry run.
Yeah, I have a question. How will you fund the bins? How will you raise money? Are you going to have a drive?
So most of the money from that we're not going to be used towards garbage collection because we will have composting now and dumpsters won't be overflowed outside of dormitories, the money saved with the garbage collection can be allocated towards this project.
On another note, we have a really untapped well of funding when it comes to, it seems like, the student senate and club funding way that it works. And the system overall can seem to really be pushed to new avenues of expansion projects through clubs and through other activities like that to really be able to fund something like this. Student Senate circulates around $1 million every single year for club funding through there. And if a small portion of it was allocated towards projects like these under either a unified group or multiple groups and clubs, you can get movements and actions like these to happen and respond very quickly in comparison to my current method of doing all this.
We thought about distribution in the residence halls there. Were you thinking like a centralized container that people would bring them down, or things more distributed per room, or you hadn't really gotten that far into the details yet?
Well, as far as I understand, I live off campus. But it seems like most of the students have a trash bin or a recycling bin in their dorm that they then bring down to a centralized bin. So yeah, it would be a similar process to that.
And the follow-up to that, we find a lot of the students, though we do provide that, the little plastic bags, which are harder and harder to get from the trash, a lot of them like to actually hang them on doorknobs, so they just had a second trash can for doing that. So your thought was, so in your pricing model there, was that providing a bin to every single student in the or every single room in the residence halls?
So yeah, for the suites, we would add a small bin per kitchen, and then for the dormitories that don't have kitchens, we would add like another bin, because there's a recycling, a trash, but there would also be a compost bin to each. Yeah.
Have you factored in the cost of collection?
Not exactly.
So we thought about it a little bit, and we thought about maybe getting students to do maintenance, and it could be a job on campus regarding to composting.
To expand on that, like they just said, there's a untapped market, in my opinion, for sustainable jobs, either paid jobs on campus or just student-ran activities. But there's not, like they said, there's not a job where it's like, hey, you go, you pick up the compost at Browning and Butterfield, and you get paid like $12 an hour, like someone who works at Ramsden, which I do, and you do that. But there are not sustainable jobs or opportunities to really expand this. You could have a whole flowing system, like an ecosystem, but it just doesn't exist yet. And that's really another thing that needs to happen. There needs to be like new job titles and new positions for students where they are doing these sustainable actions. They're recycling, or they're cleaning up, or they're doing something like this, or they're composting, because this could be made into its own market. It's already profitable in some avenues, like composting, for many businesses and other corporations.
I have a question. Sometimes with these efforts, you find people composting things that can't be composted. What would the initial education be for the students? Have you thought about that in terms of what can be composted, what can't?
Right. Well, yeah, so that would definitely tie into the education part. We do know with our French culture aspect of our classes that there's a much more developed system of organizing your trash. And so would be to try to do something like that, where on the trash there are labels that are pretty detailed about what goes in where. So that, yeah, that would have to be part of the education, put it on the bins and explain. Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you.
We have the next group. I think they will be presenting biodiversity and apiculture.
approved?
Yeah. Maybe you weren't on it. Okay.
I hate silence. While they're getting set up, give them time to do that, take the pressure off them. Just want to let you know there is a composting site still on campus over in Graduate Village. We worked with the Master Gardeners years ago. There's a community garden there. Part of that is a compost bin that's out there. And yes, they've had to do supplemental education on what goes in, even down to the size of chopping things in from actual. So there are some opportunities for doing that.
Where does the compost go?
Right there back into the gardens.
That, what I mean, we have like
Oh, the massive amount for doing that. I don't know.
but if this actually work out, what would happen with the compostable?
Not for sure I'm following the question.
I mean, is there like a company or site or, you know, that it's back and forth, the farms in the area?
Here has experience in that. He works with the composting company now, but you're actually paying them?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we pay for the removal of or the hauling of all compost. Right now, we're pulling, I think it's 30,000 pounds a year off campus. So, I mean, it's a lot of compost or potential. Yes, and from the dining halls.
Where does it go?
It goes to the compost plant's located in Smithfield. I know a lot of people around here know about Earth Care Farm. That's in Charlestown. They unfortunately aren't taking any more clients. The problem with the compost plant that we've experienced is that they have a very limited footprint of what they are willing to take because it's all windrow farms. There are no mechanized digesting systems within the state of Rhode Island, and actually not even in the immediate vicinity. I think the closest one is on the outskirts of New York in Connecticut. So we can do a lot of things, but we also have to be very conscious of contamination of the compost stream because quickly it can get contaminated very easily, and then they just basically have to dispose of all the items that we've sent into compost. Yes.
Could you just maybe follow up and tell the students what you think the feasibility of their project is?
So I've actually done on-campus composting at another university that was a smaller university, and it was practically impossible. However, there are a couple things that would be good takeaways. One is, dining services isn't opposed to trying to support or working with student groups to try and support student positions. The first and foremost would be some kind of a student steward or sustainability steward that would actually manage the largest, I would say the largest area for capturing items that could be composted would be in the dining halls from the post-consumer side. Right now we do pre-consumer composting, but post-consumer composting would be the best. So getting student jobs, as Dylan mentioned, in the dining halls where students basically are making sure that other students are not contaminating the compost stream would be your best bet. You'd probably be able to recapture 80% of what items might be composted on campus just that way. So those items would in turn not go into the waste stream and not turn into methane. I personally think that working on a digester, if I can throw out my little idea, but that's something that would be good for, I think, our campus, but it takes a lot of doing. And that would also involve sustainable jobs for students because you'd need someone, again, to help manage that in some capacity. I would say the way you have it set up and structured, it's great. It's very pie in the sky. You really need to think about how it's going to be broken down into digestible chunks.
Yeah, what's a digester?
Digester is an anaerobic, it's almost like a rock tumbler, but for food waste. But you can also put in pretty much anything. You can put in animal waste, so it could be used at Peckham Farm. It then produces methane and compost, but in an accelerated fashion. The methane could then be captured, put into a methane generator to power some aspect of, it could be some aspect of the farm, whether it's agronomy farm or Peckham Farm. And then in turn, you have the compost that's produced in days as opposed to months. And
I just wanted to say there's some great models for actually elementary and high school students who are starting green teams at their school where they go and they're getting their schools to do the post-consumer waste and like serve as those educators within the classroom. So it would be cool if higher ed was learning from the younger kids.
Alrighty. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shoshana. Today, my group and I will be presenting the potential for an ecological program to increase biodiversity across our campus, specifically to increase the bee population at URI. And I think across this room, we've all pretty much heard the term "save the bees." So in French, we were inspired by that, and we said, "Sauver les abeilles, non, les abeilles nous sauveront," which means save the bees. No, the bees will save us. So 7 years from now, the world could start to look like this. Our presentation, in alignment with the Solve Climate 2030 values, will help uncover a possible local and global solution to avoid this dire future. So what we want URI students to understand is that those pictures could and may just be our future without bees. So our presentation will be focused on 3 major parts. First, the impact biodiversity and specifically pollinators can have in our environment. We'll also be presenting some results from a poll taken with URI students about their knowledge on these topics. And second, we'll be talking about some solutions we could integrate into our campus and how these solutions can be even useful to other colleges, college campuses worldwide. We'll then conclude by discussing how exactly our project could change the narrative surrounding bees and on a larger scale, climate change, what we're all here for. First, we'll have Aiden presenting biodiversity and the importance of pollinators.
All right, hello everyone, I'm Aiden. So we wanted to start by talking about biodiversity and pollinators. So what it really inspired us to work on this project was biodiversity. And so what that is the variety of life in the world, habitat, or ecosystem. So that can be divided into those 3 levels, your global, local, and then even like community level. So what we've seen from the World Wildlife Foundation is that there's an average of 69% decline in global population of pretty much all animals since 1970, and then 3/4 of land-based environment and 66% of the ocean environment have been significantly altered. So there's a real onus on us that we need to take charge on this biodiversity front. So what we wanted to do first was really involve URI students and kind of get a sense of their where we are as a campus, because we need to meet people where they are if we want to have any chance at changing the narrative about biodiversity. So in our poll, we have over 80 respondents so far, and we are still getting some currently. So one of the questions we asked was, is local biodiversity decreasing? And only 69% of respondents believe that local biodiversity is decreasing, which we know as we are studying environmentalism now in our French class, that local biodiversity is indeed increasing. So there's 30% of the URI student body that doesn't know currently local biodiversity is decreasing. But if you compare that on the global level, that's up to 90%. So the messaging like polar bears and big animals like that are disappearing has been effective, but currently, at least on the local, URI, and Rhode Island level, URI students don't understand that. And then we wanted to ask some more questions about what they know about pollinators specifically, and that's the direction that we're going with our biodiversity. So 100%, every single person that answered this poll knew that bees would be the most effective pollinators as compared to hummingbirds, bats, or wasps. However, 94% of students have heard the saying, "save the bees." So somehow those 6% haven't, but again, we want to change that and show people that bees are really important for us moving forward.
Okay. Hi, I'm Edith. So just going back to what Aiden was saying, pollinators. So what can our pollinators do for us? So you know bees are usually the ones around the flowers and the plants and all our kind of agriculture around here. And between 75 and 95% of all flowering plants on this earth need help with pollination. And you can see in that graphic on the right there, the pollinators that we have. So again, like Aiden said, bees are our most effective pollinator, which is why this project is kind of circling around that, but there are other pollinators existing. And so why the bees? So today our commercial production of more than 90% of crops rely on bee population. And as we know, our bee population is decreasing rather exponentially. And if we don't continue to increase and really augment that care for bees and really improving our environment to support them and their life and their work, then our biodiversity can't increase from there. So bees are really an important bioindicator for biodiversity in our area, so that's why we're using them as our focus on this project while working on local biodiversity around Rhode Island. So just some possible solutions. We wanted to go ahead in the poll as well, ask URI students what they thought was possible. So you can see on the left there, students were about 30% interested, about 30% was the majority taking a class on beekeeping. I know we offer a few apiculture classes here, but even just something for students in classes such as URI 101 about bees and how they help and what we have on campus to improve sustainability and really improve that biodiversity surrounding that care for bees. And 62% supported bee habitats on campus. So one out of five, that was the highest percent. They all supported having those bee habitats, which is very nice to see, right? We all want to encourage bees on campus and not look at them as kind of, you know, pests and scary insects.
Hello, I'm Shannon. So I had the opportunity to actually speak with Dr. Alm, who is here with us today, and who, as we know, is a professor of entomology and he is an expert on bees and other pollinators. So we talked a lot about how we can support our native bee populations in Rhode Island. So here's a chart of some native flowers that we can start planting, either at URI, but also just in your backyard. So it doesn't have to be just at the school, but these are things that people can do every day at their homes. And yeah, such as red clover, creeping thyme, etc. And I thought it was interesting because going into this project, all we thought about was like having more beehives or something like that on campus, but in fact, there are like more easier ways to implement, to have more bees, which is just planting these flowers. Another way to promote bees is to reduce and eliminate pesticides, because most people, as we said, just think of bees and other insects as pests, and they don't want them like around them or stinging them and things like that. But these are actually really harmful for insects and bees and other insects, which are actually important for the environment. Again, we can also start converting turf to low-growing plants, which are resistant to mowing. And yes, it's just, yeah. Things like clover and other low kind of plants are good to have in the fields and things like that. Next, so for our French class specifically, we're really focusing on how can we change the narrative in order to change our habits to make us all more environmentally conscious. So again, when I was talking to Dr. Alm, I also asked him this question about how can we change the narrative around bees specifically, but also about the environment. And he mentioned how he was reading this book. I forgot the name, I'm sorry. But it's about, it's from a Native American author, and she discusses how, oh, yes, reading sweet. Yes, I'm sorry. But it's about how like Native American people have like more respect for the environment. And I thought that was very pertinent to this project as well, because like I said, most people just think of bees and other insects as pests, and they don't want them on their lawns, and they have these nicely manicured lawns, but these are actually really bad for bees, and it's very important that we learn why bees are important and why we should respect them and try to support them, actually.
Okay, so that kind of just ties us into our last point, right? Again, we said the translation of our slogan is save the bees. No, the bees are going to save us, so that's our presentation. Thank you for listening.
Any questions for them?
This is a question either for the student group or the panelists. Is there anything that URI can do to try to encourage more native plants or creating better ecosystems for bees here on campus?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, you could plant more like blueberry plants around campus. They're quite attractive, and all the leaves have nice leaves on them. You get
There we go. So yeah, just this native plant like that would be very beneficial to a lot of organisms. And we could add to that a lot of different native plants.
So on that note, who makes the decisions on campus about planting? What plants are planted?
Yeah, that's a combination of Dr. Maynard grows some plants down at East Farm, and they evaluate them, and then if they like them, and then we have Lands and Grounds, which maybe goes down, works with Dr. Maynard to see if they want to bring them back to campus. So that would be a good place to try out some of these plants, or we already know that the native plants would be good to put here, so probably just grow more native plants. And there is Rhode Island Wild Plant Society that grows all native plants, and they're a very active group, and so you could tie in with them. So.
I do know that Lands and Grounds around some of their water detention areas, in fact, there's one right behind the Union over here, try to encourage the use of natural plants, and particularly wildflowers, both for the beauty and the pollination of doing that. So they're trying to incorporate it into their planning and maintenance as well.
The issue that comes with increasing like all this organism and biodiversity and different plants and life is that Lands and Grounds ultimately will have to take care of it, because it will take back what land it is planted on if not taken care of. So then that causes the issue of you're going to, even if you do increase biodiversity and life, that is great. You're going to have the issue of lack of manpower to take care of all these plants, because they will like overgrow one another, and then you will have little ecosystems that have popped up and are trying to just live out their life and expand at the same time on campus.
I wonder if you've considered, if Lands and Grounds were going to incorporate more native plants, if there could be signage like about, oh, this is a wild habitat, or these plants are here on purpose. Maybe it doesn't look the same way as you're used to. And I do a lot of teaching about native plants, and I think one of the biggest things is like making sure the edges look maintained. So even if it's kind of a wilder looking garden than some people are used to, you can see that it's intentional by mowing the edges or by putting the signage, or a combination of multiple things. So that might be one thought. I think we could definitely do more. I have noticed native plants being used around campus though, so I think we're doing better than we have.
I had given a thought to the landscape architecture class last fall, who designed a redo of the garden outside the President's House, where the sidewalk goes to Green Hall there. What I would like to do is make a demonstration garden in that area of native pollinators, maybe with some signage, and we could put an educational spot so that people who are coming to visit campus, it's very central. We could use it as an educational opportunity for pollinators. And I would like to also put a composting thing in the middle of that to demonstrate composting and that kind of thing. So that is in the works. Might need some student help with that, but anybody is welcome to help with that.
Can I just say that if you decide to do anything like that, I don't, maybe it's just me, but I love their logo. You have these signs up like around these habitats.
Aiden made it.
Exactly.
Love the logo.
Yeah, I was thinking of making stickers or something with it. Yeah. Or like a tote bag.
I love that you made the distinction too between like beekeeping, which is the European honeybee, and then the native bees. And it's good for me to remember that not everybody knows that distinction, and like even that level of education is needed.
Yeah, that was actually something that we learned last week. We went into Shannon went into the interview, and we were kind of focusing this on European honeybees, not realizing the implications that they're not a native species in Rhode Island. So even we as experts didn't know that. So we're even learning, and we actually, because one of those poll questions was, would you support beehives on campus? So we changed so that may not be completely representative of what people are wanting, because we asked them if they want beehives. We changed it to supporting bee habitats. However, we did make that distinction for ourselves, and we learned that, so that was important for us as a group to learn.
Because there's bees and there's bumblebees and there's yellow jackets and there's wasps. So there's a lot of things that people just look at and say, oh, that's a bee, but they actually, and there's flies that look like bees too.
Yeah, there's 250 species of native bees in Rhode Island, and they did all the pollination of all the native plants before we brought over the honeybee in 1622. So, and then sometimes, it's not always the case, but sometimes like there's 50,000 honeybees in a strong hive, and they can kind of overtake an area and kind of take all the nectar and pollen from that area away from our native bees. So we got to be careful about saturating some areas with honeybees. Yeah.
Hi, yeah, I have just, it's kind of a combination of a comment and a question, but I'm an alum of URI, and I also worked at Rhode Island College. I worked in philanthropy there and a little bit of marketing. But, I mean, this was a great presentation, and I'm just wondering, there is such a captive audience of probably nearly 100,000. I don't know how many graduates URI has, but I imagine it's quite a few. And this was terrific. I mean, I'm just wondering if there'd be any cooperation with the alumni office or, you know, communications to even capture what you've done today and maybe, you know, a magazine feature or, you know, what I found out about this. I don't think it came from the alumni office, although I get newsletters from alumni. I'm not sure where this came from, but I saw this and it's captivated me because I actually am a volunteer for Climate Action Rhode Island. And so anyways, I just found this so interesting. So I'm wondering if you take this, let's say even in a newsletter to alumni, if you had a click, just that right there, save the bees. No, the bees will save you. And you know, put a click to your slides so people could see that. So it's such a captive audience. And of course we know, we hear, you know, that the bees are in jeopardy and, you know, and it's in jeopardy for the climate and our planet. But I guess if there's, you know, just a kind of suggestion, I guess, to use that.
Yeah, and we were speaking as a group yesterday before this presentation about like bringing this outside of just URI, like even to South Kingstown or Kingston community members, putting up signage like, hey, if you plant these specific type of plants in like a enclosed garden, you could really help increase the biodiversity around your area, and you can start to see more effects, and you'll start to see more bees that are, you know, not the pests that we think of, and just really increasing that education around the area, not just on URI. So that's a really good idea about including the Alumni Association. Thank you.
And I'd love to share that you could connect with some of the work that the Master Gardeners are doing around pollinator education. So I work for Cooperative Extension, which is like the community-facing arm. We are a land-grant university, so it's not just about teaching and research, it's also about educating and extending that knowledge out, resources out to the community. So the Master Gardener program has about 700 active volunteers. Mary is one. Dr. Alm teaches for us. And we are doing pollinator workshops around the state, so maybe you could go see one, or we could pair you up with a Master Gardener. And then I'd love to share my favorite bee resources are Xerces Society, Xerces, and that'll be all native plants that they're recommending for like the Northeast. They have awesome fact sheets that I always just steal and use.
Okay, thank you.
And just to say that the live stream is available online, so if you have the Harrington School website, I'll make sure that everybody that registered gets the link to this as well. Thanks to James Strong.
And just quickly, just to follow up, like people around the world are watching this or can be watching this right now because it is being live streamed internationally. Right?
That's correct. This morning at 4 a.m. was the very first event in Cameroon, West Africa, and tonight I think the last one is at 9 p.m. on the West Coast, storytelling about climate action. So it's part of a whole day of activities around the world. And this link will be available all over, and the French version of it will also be available.
To build on all of this, it's really that pushing out this local and past URI, it comes back to we need to be a lot more unified, at least on campus. You know, we have so many attempts or efforts at being sustainable. Like I can recall there's maybe 6 different or 7 different composting attempts on campus. not one of them know of each other. Different buildings and faculties are like, yeah, we compost. And I'm like, do you know that this place composts? And they're like, we had no clue. So I think the next big step is that students with all these great and grand ideas, I love them, we have to unite under either clubs or just one name or house so that we could push these activities and thoughts forward. Because like if we could unite all of composting and then get the bins out there, like the project beforehand, because I'm also like, I do composting too here on campus, that can start reducing our waste, and then we could go into bees, and it could just be, we need to be unified. That's what I'm trying to get at, because with unification and correct communication, can we expand our knowledge and power past what we already have? Any more questions? Like one last one to wrap up this section? Nope? Okay, on to the next one. And now we have the group on carbon emission and transportation.
Hey, how do I get my thing up? Yeah, I know, but do I have to log in front of everyone? Yes, so. Oh, good. Ah, you're so right. Thank you. I know you do. Oh, it says get started with Office. Sign in. Do you want me to sign in? Oh, you can skip it? Thank you. I'm not an IT student. Let's see, this is play from start. Okay. Cool. Are they ready? Are you ready? Yeah. Cool. So this says, wait, I'm going to wait for an accept conversation. Okay. So this says l'avenir électrique, which translates to the electric future. So I'm Allegra, and our project is about carbon emissions.
Hi everyone, my name is Lucas, and to start this presentation, I actually want to ask a question. And the question is, how many of y'all have used the URI shuttles? Not too many people, so I was expecting more, but it's okay. So if you use the URI shuttles, you might have noticed there's quite a lot of problems with those shuttles. And today in our presentation, we will mention some of those problems, starting with URI lacks an ecologically sustainable transportation system. This means that these buses are run on a fossil fuel based, and having a large steep campus doesn't help a lot, which doesn't contribute to our planet, which is very bad. So you can go to the next slide. So what is our goal with this presentation and this project is to a greener electric future, beginning here at URI, and hopefully to expand to other campuses, not only here in the United States, but also in the world. We aim to accomplish this by transitioning the existing URI shuttles and university vehicles fleet from diesel to electric. We also want to work in conjunction with RIPTA. We already have these projects in place, and their multi-million-dollar plan to add these electric shuttles into the state's fleet and URI.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carly. I'm a little short, so I'm just going to stand like this. So we, going off what Lucas just said, we wish to encourage more green campus by introducing more electric vehicles. A big problem with the environment currently is the gas that is being emitted through vehicles and buses. So our current shuttle bus system, we would like to implement more of an electric shuttle bus, which will decrease the amount of gas in the air, which will, in theory, create better air quality and create a lower running cost over time.
So, we did send out a survey to URI students, but only 46 of them answered, so it wasn't really a good basis. But we're gonna go off what we had. So 87% of those students said they use cars to get on and off campus, which means they're emitting a ton of fossil fuels coming to and from campus every day. And we originally looked into a shuttle system that goes off campus into our most populous off-campus neighborhoods, so eastward, Bonnet Shores and Scarborough. But then I spoke to Mr. Joe Paradise at Transportation and Parking, and he told me that they did explore that option in 2018, but that for a couple different reasons, it wouldn't work, students weren't into it, and it ended up being a money thing that right now our current transportation fee is about a little over $1 million, and that covers the campus shuttle and our off-campus RIPTA program, where students can get 50% off their RIPTA fees. So in order to make an off-campus shuttle happen, they would have to increase the fee and double the parking permits, and it ended up being super expensive. So he told me about their next shuttle service agreement, which in the fiscal year 2027, it was planning to incorporate electric buses, but I think that's waiting too long. The change needs to happen sooner than that, and so our plan is to incorporate it over, like, transition electric buses in, not immediately change all of the buses to being electric, but even just starting with one on-campus electric shuttle will get us closer to that than just implementing it in 4 years.
So the solution, y'all might be wondering what this fancy name means, but basically these are currently the electric buses used by RIPTA. In 2018, they passed an agreement funded by the state of Rhode Island to implement these buses. So the buses are equipped with large extended range batteries that can fully charge in 3.8 hours. And they are 40 feet long. And since we're in a campus which have a lot of hills, there are other options for 30 foot options available for campus use. And they have a seating capacity of 40. They range up to 258 miles to 340, and they have a zero-type emission also.
Hello, I'm Sydney. So as previously stated, our solution to reducing URI's greenhouse gases is to transition to e-buses, powered buses that you can charge, and this will make a big difference to URI. So looking at this graph to the right, we see that buses contribute a pretty significant amount of emissions globally. And so in 2018, 75% of transport emissions came from passenger vehicles such as buses, cars, taxis, and motorcycles. So if we implement e-buses at URI, we can help shave down even just like a little bit of all of URI's total emissions, even if we look at buildings and cooking and transporting other things. If we just make this small change by implementing e-buses, I think we would make a very large difference.
So looking ahead for URI, going off what Sydney said, transitioning to electric buses and vehicles is the first step in trying to lower our total carbon footprint as a university. Eventually, our goal is to phase out all fossil fueled vehicles, which we know is a big step. So the first step would be just implement type of a hybrid form of a vehicle potentially. And looking ahead worldwide, we know we're not the only university in the entire world. Obviously, there are hundreds of other universities. And we want to extend our ideas to other countries as well. So for example, we have in France, students take public transportation to get to their campuses, so they may be more inclined to use these buses in comparison to students here, who are a lot more of commuters and do drive cars, which we recognize, especially in our surveys. The next step would be to transition those buses to hybrid electric vehicles, like I just said.
So together we can work towards a greener roadie future. That's our little thank you. We really want a more ecologically effective solution for campus. We know it's super expensive, but we think that it's worth it to spend that money to save our planet. So, yeah. Questions, comments, concerns? Yes?
Your primary focus was looking at the campus perimeter stuff, but you mentioned RIPTA, you mentioned the 50% pass and so on. One of your goals was to reduce student gasoline vehicle-powered vehicles. RIPTA is converting to many of those. Did you consider at all educating our students on how to use an education program, the existing public transportation system, to get to and from campus, to and from the airport, to and from the mall, and other locations for $1?
So we didn't look into educating people on that. I think a lot of people are aware of the RIPTA bus system being in place. I'm not sure how many actually know about the 50% off program. I know about it because my freshman year it was free and then they changed it. So now it's $1, which is so much less appealing, but I also think that the students at our university, because so many are commuters, have access to cars, and for the, because it's just so much easier to get in a car than wait for a bus, I believe they're less inclined to take the RIPTA. It would be awesome if they did, but because Rhode Island, I believe that our public transportation isn't that great. I think the RIPTA is difficult to use, and I'm not from here, so maybe that's just me. I would love it if it was easier to use, but as a student with a car, it's easier for me to take a car somewhere than to pay $1 to take the bus and have it take longer.
A comment building off of that, like $1 is a lot less than the cost of gas and then also just the general upkeep of the car. If you're going to go towards that and maybe doing some student education, I think that could definitely be a part of it. That's always something that I forget about. Like, as also being a senior, my freshman year, it being free, I utilized that bus system at least 10 times that first year. And I haven't since, just because of that $1 barrier. But however, that is a lot less than paying for gas, and that's definitely something that you might forget about now.
If you want to add education in, the good place to do it is URI 101, because every single student who comes here has to take it. And I'm a URI 101 mentor, and I personally always tell my students, like, if you don't have a car, because freshmen are not allowed to bring cars on campus, you can take the bus. It goes to the beach, it goes to the mall, it goes to Warwick, Providence, it goes to Newport. It's very, very efficient. So maybe if you are adding that to your plan, just putting it in classes such as that, where the mentors can change it and really emphasize the importance of using it.
That's a great suggestion, thank you.
I just think the main issue is once or two bus an hour is not enough, because I don't think a student would want to wait 30 minutes or an hour just to get home. Like, it's really long, so I think this is the main issue why students don't take the buses, because there aren't any buses coming soon on the campus.
In terms of time, I'm a frequent bus rider. I know that if your timing works out, I can get home faster on the bus than I can in my car. But it has to be around that hour that they're actually going to pick me up and drop me off.
No, I
Stay
can-
to the airport, and I have to pay $2.
I can just base off that. Me, for example, I go home like almost every weekend, and for me to get home, I have to take like 2 buses. Which compared to a car, I can just take a car and like get home faster. So most of the times, it's not even because students don't want to. It's just like they don't have that option of like getting there faster.
Yeah.
I'll use the microphone. So I've been working on sustainable transportation at URI probably for at least 20 years, and we've been through all these ideas before, and especially trying to get fewer students to drive to campus. I think that's probably in addition to making the campus itself cleaner, that's the primary goal. And a big part of that is, of course, creating like a culture of sustainability, which is what Dylan talked about earlier. Create awareness among the students, and URI 101 may be one of them, but there's a lot of different things that we can do. And so if you have sustainable transportation, I think about typically 3 different things: public transportation, carpooling, and then biking and walking. So public transportation exists, but it could definitely be improved, and we all know this. Carpooling, I think at this URI is probably the most promising because, but of course it's also inconvenient and requires coordination. But if you have enough of a culture there and you get students, especially now with all the social media, etc. I mean, it's a lot easier to connect with your couple or if somebody can. Or you could even think about some kind of an Uber type system that's run by students. I think I don't know if I thought of it or somebody talked about it, but you know, so where you pay the driver basically because it's not always, you can't always arrange these things. Yeah. So I think carpooling would be probably the most promising in a campus like this where we have, and that should also include faculty and staff. You know, and as an example, but a lot of staff, especially live west of here, and there's no bus connection. If you go past West Kingston, so I think for that carpooling would pretty much be the only thing. And finally, biking and walking, obviously that's the most sustainable option. And obviously if you live in Scarborough, you can't really bike here reasonably. So that's where maybe now in the future we could start thinking about e-bikes. But e-bikes are becoming more affordable, and that would actually, we could probably on an e-bike you get here from Scarborough in less than a half hour. And you can connect with the bike path and they're against it. So that may be, obviously that's also a big investment. So it's like the buses and all that. So I was finally like for myself. So I commute to URI. I live in about a half hour away. And today I came in, I had a meeting at the business school. The bike rack had just been removed. The bike rack was gone. And I went here, and there was no bike rack here either. So I ended up chaining a bike to a tree or something like that. So just a little thing like that could really help. But I think the bigger thing is making sustainable awareness of sustainability part of the culture. And some of it is obviously, we have a lot of classes that deal with environmental issues, but I think making the connection between the theory or whatever, the learning class and our actions, that's the key. And of course, we also need the infrastructure like public transportation and e-buses and e-bikes. So the final thing I want to I don't have my PowerPoint, but so I go to, I'm from Germany, so I go over there a lot, and I have a collaborator in Göttingen, Germany, which is near Hanover. So if you go to the train station, you see at least 1,000 bikes at the train station, and then so students take the train from the next town over, they pick up a bike, and they get on the 4-lane bike highway, which connects 3 campuses. And so there are other, I mean, obviously that would take a big change in many things, but just an idea that you can see you can change. And the culture actually is changing over there too.
Just finish off, another problem that we probably forgot to mention is these shuttles are not very based around people with disabilities, because some of them are not very accessible for people with disabilities. So one of our ideas will probably also be how we can work around these shuttles and make it more accessible to everyone too.
Something I wanted to add on to this was I actually had an idea for this system. You don't necessarily have to, doing our public transportation, all electric buses is great, but if it's due to an economical standpoint not capable at this point, the middle ground where I thought it could be done is how we have shuttle services that go off campus to pick people up. What is stopping us from, one, making those vehicles electric to start off with because their initial buy-in and cost is a lot lower, and then 2, setting up a student-ran carpooling system. So you would have, say, a Kia EV7, which is a big SUV, it's electric, and you'd have a student who was paid to drive students on and off campus for, say, 4-hour shifts. And then you could, 1, reduce carbon emissions and increase that carpooling because it'd just be a sign-up system. And this would be another thing where it's the university can support sustainability through just creating new job opportunities And you could also support this through subsidized programs for students who are trying it out. Like RIPTA did. It used to be free, then half price. That's the same thing you could do with these sort of systems. You could start with an electric carpooling service to nearby towns and cities within Rhode Island for students to come and to go and come. And then you could get rid of, say, the subsidies and just have this culture built around, oh, I'm not going to take my car. It's a lot cheaper to take the electric car provided by Rhode Island, just like the bus system for the shuttles here.
Yeah, I was going to ask a question if anyone knew of any apps that help with carpooling, because that comes up in our community programming too, in terms of accessibility. If people don't have to take public transit, it's harder for them to attend programming. So we want to do more carpooling, and I didn't know if anyone knew of anything.
In France, we have a very famous app. I don't know if we can come worldwide, but it's called BlaBlaCar. It's mean Blabla, like speaking car, and you just book to go anywhere, and it's really cheap, cheaper than train, and everybody uses it to do tiny, tiny things or big journeys. So yeah, it's really famous, and everybody uses it.
Yeah, it's a carpooling app. So you can, like, if you want to go from here to Chicago, you go on the app and you say that you want to go from here to Chicago, and then you see which drivers are willing to basically take you there. And if they have a rate, you know, there's a suggested rate per passenger.
It's like Airbnb, but for carpooling.
There's also, I think Waze has a carpooling program, but I don't know like how it works or if it can be used. But every time I open Waze, it says, "Do you want to carpool?" And the answer is usually no, but I think it does have an option.
I have two comments. First is, I think on impact. I mean, I appreciate your focusing on the shuttles, but it would be interesting to do a calculation of the amount of CO2 that we're getting from individual cars being driven on and off campus every day versus the carbon emissions from the shuttle buses. I think you're going to find there's a way more carbon emissions coming from the students driving back and forth. And when I see the cars lined up leaving campus every day, there's one person in almost every car. And I think that what you're talking about with the carpooling, we need to figure out a way, because behavior only changes when there's incentives. We need to find a way to incentivize behavior change, and it needs to be a positive incentive, not, you know, you're paying more for parking or whatever. We need to find a way to change the psychology around coming onto campus in your own car, and that sort of demand that people have for being able to do whatever they want at any moment of any day. We need to, you know, realize that the things that we do in our days, the decisions we make, have an impact, and that you can't just think about yourself every time you want to do something. You need to think about the impact that's having on the environment and on your fellow people. So that's what I have to say.
Yeah, so I lived with a girl last year, and we ran very similar schedules, so we carpooled to school most days. But because it was just the two of us, we were still both paying for parking permits just in case one of us had to go and the other didn't have to. And I think the other problem with carpooling is that you can't guarantee it semester by semester because schedules change so much. And so, like last year we carpooled together every day, and this year our schedules are so different that we don't line up at all, and we can't come to campus together anymore. And so I think also that's part of the problem is if two of us can't get our schedules to line up, it's very hard to get 4 people's schedules to line up to be able to carpool that many together.
But maybe if there was an app, then you could find some random person who lives near you that you could solve that problem.
Yeah.
Sounds like a launch lab opportunity.
We had a combination rideshare app and like Venmo, so make money for
That's actually how the BlaBlaCar works, is you pay on the app.
Yeah, it's it seemed like it.
Any more questions?
I just had one. On the price of the bus, it included 13 cents. Is that really what the price that they gave you?
So, me and so this is actually funny.
You think if you're paying $1 million, they can
So-
No, they want every penny.
So when we did the research, me and the other group member, I took the wrong bus. It wasn't this one. It was the wrong one, and I think he forgot to switch the number for this one, for the right one. So I don't really know about the price, but I will check with him and let you know next time.
But if they say 13 cents, they want 13 cents.
And I make one more comment is that the electricity that is fueling these buses, that's not necessarily clean fuel. I mean, the electricity comes from somewhere. Is it coming from an alternative energy source? Is it coming from burning coal? Just because the bus is electric and not emitting something doesn't mean that the electricity behind the bus is clean. So we've got to keep that in mind as well.
For that money, you can get about 800 e-bikes.
Okay, that's the end of this part. We're gonna wrap up everything and just have a last discussion on anything else.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much to the groups. Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Diamond. I'm a professor of environmental communication here. And I'm just going to wrap us up. I just want to say that it's so motivating and uplifting to hear these ideas from these student groups. You guys have obviously done a lot of research and thought critically about what needs to happen to make URI a leader in sustainability. You know, we've got a far ways to go, but there's a lot of potential here, and I think that you guys having your inspirational ideas and sharing that with us and allowing us to have this dialogue with people who have the power to make some of the changes and have some of that institutional knowledge about what will work and what won't work. I think we've got a lot of momentum. So thank you all students for these great ideas. Just to wrap us up, I would like to ask each of the panelists to reflect on the 3 presentations we've heard and the conversations that we've had. And if you can think of one thing that we can do as a community, as URI, in the near future, let's say, you know, within the next 5 years, to make a noticeable difference for sustainability, towards climate change, towards biodiversity. What is one thing that you see a pathway for us to be able to achieve as a university, as a community, in the next 5 years towards these goals? Either reflecting on the 3 topics we've talked about today, or if there's anything else that we haven't talked about today that you think we could really do. Let's try to leave the conversation today with some uplifting ideas about how we can actually start to see change on campus. So I'll start with
Sure, I first want to invite you all, I'm going to leave this here, and if anybody wants to take a photo of it, there's a class being offered, Experiential Philosophy, Philosophical Issues, and Food Recovery. So it's actually a way to get college credit by taking one of our newest extension Train the Trainer programs that's intended for community members, but it's been of a lot of interest to URI students as well. Our Food Recovery for Rhode Island course, so if you like the issue of food waste and how do we feed people while also reducing carbon emissions, you would take this philosophy course and do like a little extra project and get college credit. So take a look at this for the next semester. It's with Professor William Krager, and I like bringing it back to, I love biodiversity, it's hard to choose which one, but the food recovery issue. Compost is a great option, but there are other options too, like reducing. I think we're doing a great job in the dining halls, of reducing the amount of waste that happens in the first place. And I wonder, I've been working a little bit with catering with some of the events we've been doing, of thinking through like sustainable issues. How can we compost at our events and conferences? And it's been not a difficult lift. We are bringing in like URI food recovery volunteers to be there and help educate people where to put their waste. And I wonder if that could be like an option that's built into events in the future, if we could kind of look into that being being one of the things in the next 5 years of teaming up and making that more of a reality.
No, it's all right. I love to be put on the spot like that. Well, we could certainly do something like that. I actually think there are, like, I don't know, 6 things I'd like to do at minimum. Sure, I'd like to work towards having sustainability or composting stewards, whatever you'd like to call them, in dining halls, so we could start doing post-consumer composting. I would like to get to a point where we ensure that wherever we can, we're using reusable cups, cutlery, all that fun stuff, rather than any type of disposable, because it's just better. I'd also, in that same vein, I'd like to figure out a way, there are a few options out there, but a way that would work for our school to do reusable to-go containers, because that's something that's important, because that just causes more waste in the waste stream. And certainly anything that could move towards the ultimate goal of having a digester or working with that. I think that as far as electric vehicles, you might consider bridging the gap between fully electric, some things fully electric and not, by maybe using biofuel in the meantime. We certainly have a lot of waste oil that occurs within like dining services alone that could be converted to or used as biofuel. But in that same light, if we are going to be purchasing vehicles, it might help if it was mandated that all vehicles purchased from X point forward would be electric vehicles and not any other type of vehicles. And as far as bees go, who doesn't like bees? So I mean, there's any number of ways that we could actually incorporate that as part of, it could be almost like bees and worms. You have vermiculture on one side and apiaries on the other side. So what are we doing on these two things? They're directly related to food, which is obviously my gig. So anything that we could do to support that, we would do. And I don't know if we have apiaries on campus currently, but we could certainly start, installing some throughout the campus, and that would be all good.
I think the chickens at the President House would love to have an apiary nearby, don't you?
Yes. No question.
I think going to what my goals are and what I want to do here is goes back down to 3 things. Something that Pierre said, and I'd love to work with this on you even more, is that we need to start collecting organic waste pre-consumerism, when it's out there, when students are just throwing out their trash. And that needs to work in tandem with 2 other core things. I want this to be like a sort of 3-legged stool of sustainability support at URI. We need a new job market for students. I think that's the first thing. Like Pierre said, and like I've said, there needs to be a job market that supports not just students being sustainable, but gives them other incentives to do this. And that could just be a cultural thing too, that they know they're helping URI be greener than it ever has been before, reaching new peaks. Actually, someone who's sitting right in front of me, Jonah, Vice President of the Student Senate, we have been in talks about getting this finally rolling, maybe for next semester, and we'll definitely be in talks with Pierre. And the third thing I want to do is I want to renew and fix what systems we do have. We do have compost plant, we do have all these things, but we need to expand them. And through the expansion, it will be through mostly student movement and student effort. So my last goal for the next 4 years that I'm here is to really unify what student efforts we have in all the sustainable action clubs, groups, and senates under one faction, so that we can really push out these plans and ideas a lot easier and faster.
I'm completely with you on that. I think one thing people may or may not know is that URI has an Office of Sustainability, which is currently rudderless. It's an open position. I would like to see on the search for that position. I would like to see student representation. I would like to see that there would be a strong connection with student activity, and that would help you unify efforts on campus around all of these issues. So I think that's going to be a key to future things such as the carpooling. I think that's a really, really important thing, that we need to figure out how to reduce the number of cars coming on our campus. I am going to build that demonstration garden out by the president's house, so that will definitely do that eventually. I think as far as actions, I think the composting is very important. I like Pierre's idea of the stewards, the student stewards, making sure people aren't throwing plastic into the compost. I think another potentially untapped resource is the URI 101, which you mentioned before. If we want a culture change on campus, something that every student is involved with, people come with all kinds of different backgrounds and different ideas and different levels of knowledge of what sustainability is and what green things are. And we could have a module in that URI 101 about sustainability and about the kind of campus that we want to be, so that we're all kind of from the very beginning in the same boat.
Can you hear me? Oh, take yours. There we go. It's on me. No, I think I'd like to underscore one of the things that Mary said, and one of our students said earlier too. For me, the thing that is going to make a difference is education and sustainability of student action, and I've seen it at other campuses for this. The one problem with working with administrations or at universities where students have good ideas, we can wait you out. You're here for a short period of time. So when you begin to take on these initiatives, make sure that you're looping in the younger students into these things, so you're building that. It's not just sustainability on the campus, it's sustainability of leadership on this. Because it's really going to be the students who continue to hold the administration and the university responsible. We can do better. And we know we can. We've demonstrated some of the ways we do it. And education is always going to be. We've got to normalize this activity. One of my goals, which I haven't met yet, is for student welcome week orientation for every student to take a RIPTA bus someplace, because most of them, the only bus they've ever ridden was yellow. So I think in this, whether they use it or not, they at least know it exists, that they need to go someplace. So I think continue, how do we educate them? URI 101, orientation week, but it can't be hit or miss. It's got to be a part of the culture. And I think that education needs to be active in classes and passive, like some of the signage that we've talked about on campus, that you just can't help bumping into this theme, whether it's the water that's flushing the toilets is gray water or something else, or the power that's powering these lights is coming from a wind turbine somewhere. So again, it's students and, again, education are the two things we're doing. And for that, one of the things I didn't get to achieve is I think the the composting in the residence halls is achievable. It's the devil's in the details. University of Georgia has a program that works out very well. I've been looking for others at other places, haven't got them yet, so.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I think every student should have to take an entomology course. Oh. I'm kidding. No, the education is certainly one of these. Just the difference between a yellow jacket and a bald-faced hornet and a bee. Those are wasps. Bees are bees. Bees are vegetarian. So, yeah. Bees are vegetarian wasps, but bees are very intent. When they go to a flower, they're very intent on just getting the pollen or nectar out of there. So you can go right up there and photograph them. They're not going to sting you if you're not near their nest or colony. So it's very difficult to get stung by a bee, really. Yellow jackets and wasps, or bald-faced hornets, no, they'll sting you in a minute if you get close to their nest, because they're protecting their colony. But things we could do for bees, just more flowers equal more bees, because they are only interested in pollen and nectar. So it's pretty simple, really. And so more native plants will equal more bees. And they're not gonna bother most people, really. And you won't even notice them, because there's 5 different families of bees in Rhode Island. These little sweat bees, you're not even gonna really notice them. Little carpenter bees, minor bees. So yeah, more flowers, more bees. And maybe some areas we can put two plants that you can mow. They're out of the way. They're not going to be in students aren't going to step on them. Things like creeping thyme, you can mow it fairly closely. Again, maybe certain areas tucked away that there's not a lot of human traffic that we can convert to places like that. So yeah, the apiaries, the honeybees, they will sting you if you get too close to their nest too, so we'll keep those at East Farm. But come and visit us. You're all welcome to come down. We'll show you the honeybees down there. Yeah, we will, Dr. Kieswetter and I are working on varroa mite. It's a very major pest of honeybees. But we do want to encourage the native bees. So native flowers, more native bees. To get those back up and running. A bumblebee survey we recently completed. There used to be 12 bumblebees in Rhode Island. We've only been able to find 7 of them. So the loss of 5 species of bumblebees is huge. And that's just the large bees that we can identify on the wing. All these other bees are probably declining as well. So we need to bring them back.
Okay. So, as in conclusion, I would also, I'm thinking in 3 levels of action. The lowest level, obviously, to create awareness, in classes, in your network, including student organizations, Greek system, all these networks that are out there. Then the second level would be make small changes. So it could be if we talk about transportation and mobility, like a carpool day at URI, or a day where everybody, like you said, everybody, a car-free day where you take the bus or walk or bike or somehow, or carpool. And so then, and then ultimately like a bigger change, some integrated, in my case, integrated transportation system that integrates, that is multimodal in some way. Maybe people drive to a place and then it's picked up by one of those electric shuttles or different options. And of course, down the road, also my e-bike idea, I think, also has a lot of potential because e-bikes are cool now. So I think overall, anything we can do to change the culture and create awareness, both in students, but it also has to involve faculty and staff, because if we are role models, I think we have a better shot at changing the transportation system, the food system, and sustainability on campus overall. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all for those great ideas, and for everyone for coming today, the students. This is our 3rd year of doing some variation of this event around this International Solve Climate Day, and I think this was a really successful one, and I would like to see us return to this conversation every year, and that will help with the leadership sustainability that Renke was talking about. So keep that in mind, keep that on your radar, keep fighting the good fight, and we appreciate all the work and the ideas that you've all brought to this table. Thank you for coming. We also still have a lot of food, and we don't want food waste, so make sure to grab some extra lunch when you're headed out. Yeah.
We have 7 years to 2030.
Yeah, the goal of this global initiative is solve climate by 2030, and we are getting very, very close to that. So we've got a lot of work to do, but look forward to doing it all with you. Thank you.
Phone number or email?
Email, because I have the next